We live in interesting times for the headlines. North Korea conducted the latest in a series of missile launches Saturday to protest U.S.-South Korean war games, just hours after U.S. President Donald Trump expressed his own frustration with the exercises. At least 18 people were killed, 16 others missing in a landslide after Typhoon Lekima hit eastern China, according to national television. London celebrates the 105th anniversary of the Iglesia Ni Cristo with a performance of high-end center stage at the Lighthouse Theatre. The ambassador of the Federal Republic of Nigeria visited the Church of Christ Central Office in Quezon City for a courtesy call on the INC Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo Manalo. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. First to Hong Kong, pro-democracy activists kept up the pressure, continuing a sit-in at the airport and staging a family rally to show support for their movement as it enters the third month. Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam warned on Friday that 2 months of pro-democracy demonstrations were causing economic chaos in the city, but ruled out making concessions to silence the violent protesters. The embattled leader met with business leaders as thousands of pro-democracy activists staged a sit-in at Hong Kong Airport, hoping to win international support for their movement. Now, Mrs. Lam, whose support for a bill to allow extradition to mainland China sparked the crisis, warned that the economic impact of the unrest threatened to be worse than the 2003 SARS outbreak or the 2008 financial crisis in the financial hub.
I don't think we should just sort of make concessions in order to silence the violent protesters. We should do what is right for Hong Kong. And at this moment, what is right for Hong Kong, as we have heard all our 33 business representatives told us, is to stop the violence and to say no to the chaotic situation that Hong Kong has experienced in the last few weeks, so that we can move on. And when we move on, we will hope that we could tackle the more fundamental and deep-seated problems that may have surfaced as a result of this particular situation.
Protesters have staged increasingly inventive rallies across Hong Kong and brought out supporters ranging from families to lawyers in a bid to show the broad backing for their demands. But the demonstrations have also increasingly descended into violence, with police firing tear gas and rubber bullets and protesters hurling bricks and bottles. The airport sit-ins is the second time the demonstrators have brought their message to the busy travel hub, hoping to garner support from international arrivals.
It's a lovely action. Also, show of all the visitors. We are love of our country, but we needed to carry out our requests.
I feel that they're very polite, they're very respectful, they're using their democratic right to get their viewpoint across, and I think it's a good thing. It has made me more aware of what's going on and how your future may be changing. So it has certainly, I think to a lot of people in Europe, it has made them much more aware of the political climate in Hong Kong.
Today's people come out and want to tell to the foreigners from other countries to tell them what Hong Kong doing nowadays.
Further protests are planned across Hong Kong over the weekend, with fears that new confrontations between police and demonstrators are possible. Hundreds of people have already been arrested in the unrest. The weeks of demonstrations pose the biggest threat to Beijing's authority since Hong Kong's handover from Britain in 1997. Meanwhile, the United States and China have stepped up an increasingly harsh war of words over pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. Beijing seeks to push its accusations that the mass demonstrations are being fueled by foreign powers. Take a look. In this latest exchange, Washington on Friday called out Beijing-backed news outlets for sharing dangerous reports after a newspaper revealed personal information about an American diplomat in Hong Kong who met with pro-democracy activists. The diplomat was identified as Julie Ede by pro-Beijing newspaper Ta Kung Pao, which has strong ties to the Chinese government. The paper published photos of Ede meeting with Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong and other members of his political party Demosisto at a luxury hotel in the city. As well as identifying Ede, Ta Kung Pao newspaper also published the names of her husband and their young children. Now, the move was greeted by outrage in Washington, where State Department spokeswoman Morgan Ortagus accused China of behaving irresponsibly and thuggishly.
I don't think that leaking an American diplomat's private information, pictures, names of their children, I don't think that that's a formal protest. That is what a thuggish regime would do. That's not how a responsible nation would behave. Releasing any of that personal information of an American diplomat is completely unacceptable. That's not a protest. That's what a thuggish regime does, and it's unacceptable.
Meanwhile, nurses, doctors, medical students, and ordinary people with first aid training have clamored to join what has become a small volunteer corps, helping treat people on the front lines of Hong Kong's protests that have engulfed the city for over 2 months. Take a look.
其實我哋係做一個人道救援工作。其實喺裏邊我哋去幫，無論係示威者又好，警察又好，即使受傷咧，佢都會幫嘅。
It's not just about whether or not we're helping the activists. It is a matter of whether or not these citizens, no matter they are doing anything legal or illegal, whether or not they have access to healthcare in a timely manner. We work on a humanitarian ground. We don't judge whether or not they are doing something right or not. That should go to the judge.
咁嗰下係震撼嘅，即係有啲係暈咗啊，有啲係頭破血流啊，咁有啲係情緒失控啊，咁嗰陣時都係得1-2個 first aider 計埋我咁樣去處理咯。咁其實嗰下自己心情都真係頂唔順嘅。
There's not much we can do if they ever inhabit already. We just have to evac them to a safe location, and we will use the water or the normal saline to rinse their eyes. Usually the tear gas hurts the eyes. Well, here's the wash bottle with some normal saline inside. Yeah.
I 見到啲再後生過我嘅青年人喺出面，我冇辦法退嘅。
Meanwhile, China's aviation regulator demanded that Cathay Pacific prevent airline staff who have shown support for pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong from working on flights to the mainland or routed through Chinese airspace. The regulator also ordered the city's flag carrier to hand over identity information of staff on mainland-bound flights starting Sunday, declaring unapproved flights would not be allowed in. Cathay Pacific appears to have become a target after some of its crew joined protests and media reported one of its pilots had been charged with rioting. The airline's flight attendants union put its name to a joint statement with other aviation industry employees on Monday backing the protests after some of its members joined a general strike. In return, Cathay Pacific has endured a fierce backlash on the mainland. A hashtag boycott Cathay Pacific thread on Chinese social media platforms has attracted more than 17 million views and 8,000 comments, partly fueled by articles from the powerful state-run press. Cathay Pacific Chairman John Slosar on Wednesday defended his workforce and freedom of thought. He said, quote, "We employ 27,000 staff in Hong Kong doing all sorts of different jobs. You would easily imagine that within the 27,000, we have virtually every opinion on every issue. We certainly wouldn't dream of telling them what they have to think about something." But the Chinese regulator has demanded that from Saturday, the airline stop all personnel involved with or supporting the illegal protests from flying to the mainland or in China's airspace. By August 11, the airline must start submitting crew identity information for everyone flying to or over the mainland, according to the regulator. Before August 15, the regulator demanded Cathay submit a report on planned measures to strengthen internal control and improve flight safety and security. In other news, North Korea conducted the latest in a series of missile launches Saturday to protest U.S.-South Korean war games, just hours after U.S. President Trump expressed his own frustration with the exercises. Defense officials in Seoul said what happened to be two short-range ballistic missiles were fired at daybreak from near the northeastern city of Hamhung, flying 400 kilometers before splashing down in the sea between the Korean peninsula and Japan. It was the fifth round of launches in 2 weeks, with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un labeling them a, quote, solemn warning over the joint military drills that began just days ago. Saturday's tests came shortly after President Trump said he agreed with Kim's opposition to the war games, albeit for financial rather than military reasons. President Trump has repeatedly talked up his close personal relationship with the North Korean leader as his administration seeks to resume stalled denuclearization talks with the North.
With that being said, I got a very beautiful letter from Kim Jong-un yesterday. It was delivered. It was hand-delivered from, and it was a very positive letter.
What did he say?
I'd love to give it to you. I really would. Maybe a great letter. I would love to give you, but I don't know. I don't think it would be appropriate. But it was a very personal letter. It was a great letter. He talked about what he's doing. He's not happy with the testing. It's a very small testing that we did, but he wasn't happy with the testing. He put that in the letter. But he also sees a great future for North Korea. And so we'll see how it all works out. In the meantime, I say it again, there have been no nuclear tests. The missile tests have all been short-range, no ballistic missile tests, no long-range missiles. We got back, and we're getting back as we speak. We're getting back a lot of our fallen heroes, you know that. They're coming back into and through Hawaii, and we got back our hostages. No, he wasn't. He wasn't happy with the test, the war games. The war games on the other side with the United States. And as you know, I've never liked it either. I've never liked it. I've never been a fan. You know why? I don't like paying for it. We should be reimbursed for it. And I've told that to South Korea, but I don't like it either. But I said do this because this was a big test. This was a turnover of various areas to South Korea. I like that because that's what should happen.
After Pyongyang's fourth launch early this week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Washington was ready to resume talks, but that the target of the full final denuclearization of North Korea had not changed. In other news, nearly 400 more people died in the Netherlands than normal during a record-breaking heat wave that swept through last month, according to the country's statistics agency. Dutch temperatures soared to a new high of 40.4 degrees Celsius on July 25. It broke a record dating back to 1944 and rising above the 40 degrees Celsius mark for the first time since records began. In total, 2,964 people died in the week from July 22 to the 27th, according to the Dutch Central Statistics Bureau, adding, quote, This is almost 400 people more than in an average week in the summer period. He also said the heat wave was short but very intense, with higher temperatures than ever measured in the Netherlands. Most of the extra deaths were in older people. Records stumbled across Europe during the brief but blistering heat wave, with Britain, Belgium, Germany, and the French capital, Paris, all experiencing their hottest ever days. The soaring temperatures again focused public attention on the problems caused by climate change. At least 18 people now were killed and several others are missing in a landslide after Typhoon Lekima hit eastern China, according to national television. The tragedy occurred in the municipality of Gwangju, which was in the path of the storm as it made landfall overnight. More than 1 million people were evacuated from their homes ahead of the storm, which slammed into eastern China early Saturday, bringing torrential rain and heavy winds that knocked out power and downed thousands of trees, according to state media. The monster storm made landfall in the early hours in Wanling City, packing winds of 187 kilometers per hour, and was expected to churn up the east coast towards Shanghai, Xinhua News reported. Now, more heavy rain was forecast for the Shanghai area as well as the eastern provinces of Anhui, Fujian, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang, with authorities warning of possible flash floods, mudslides, and landslides caused by the downpours. In Zhejiang province alone, nearly 300 flights were cancelled and ferry and rail services were suspended as a precaution. More than 250,000 people were relocated in Shanghai, where the high-speed maglev train that links the city to one of its airports was suspended. More than 110,000 people were housed in shelters. China issued a red alert as the storm approached on Friday, before downgrading the level to orange as winds eased on Saturday morning. At least 22 people were killed when a landslide triggered by monsoon rain struck a village in eastern Myanmar, as emergency workers continued to search Saturday for scores more feared missing. A huge brown scar on the hillside marked where the deluge of mud descended on the Tai Piarkon village in Mon State on Friday, wiping out 16 homes and a monastery. Search and rescue teams worked through the night trying to find survivors and recover bodies from the deep sludge. Local Administrator Mo Min Tun said, quote, "So far we have found 22 bodies and 47 people injured. Officials believe up to 100 people could still be missing." Torrential downpours have burst riverbanks across the country, while coastal communities have been warned of higher tides. The news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Russia's nuclear agency on Saturday said an explosion at an Arctic missile testing site had killed 5 of its staff after the military had put the death toll at 2. Earlier, the authorities in a nearby city said the accident had caused a spike in radiation levels, but the military denied this. The accident on Thursday happened during testing of a liquid propellant rocket engine at a missile test site in the far northern Arkhangelsk region. In a statement, Rosatom said the accident killed 5 of its staff and injured 3 who suffered burns and other injuries. The military had not described the accident as involving nuclear fuel. The authorities, meanwhile, have released few details of the accident at the Nyonokska test site on the White Sea, used for testing missiles used in nuclear submarines and ships since the Soviet era. The Defense Ministry initially said that 6 Defense Ministry employees and a developer were injured, while 2 specialists died of their wounds. The authorities in Severodvinsk, a city around 30 kilometers away from the test site, said on their website that automatic radiation detection centers in the city recorded a brief rise in radiation levels on Thursday morning. The post was later taken down. An official responsible for civil defense, Valentin Magomedov, told TASS News Agency on Thursday that radiation levels rose to 2.0 microsieverts per hour for half an hour from 11:50 a.m. local time before falling sharply. He said this exceeded the permitted limit of 0.6 microsieverts, according to TASS. Rosatom, meanwhile, said that the injured were being treated at a specialized medical center. To the U.S. now, the 21-year-old Texan who killed 22 people in an El Paso Walmart told police following his arrest that he was targeting Mexicans, according to an arrest warrant published on Friday by U.S. media. The document charging Patrick Cruces of Allen, Texas, with murder also described the circumstances of his arrest, saying he stepped out of his vehicle when surrounded by police, put his hands up and said, "I'm the shooter." At police headquarters, Cruces waived his right to remain silent or have a lawyer present and told detectives that his target was Mexicans. This is according to the document obtained by the Washington Post and others. Prior to carrying out the attack Saturday, Cruces published a white supremacist manifesto online which expressed fears of a Hispanic invasion of Texas. 8 of the people killed in the rampage were Mexican nationals, and many of the other victims were Americans of Hispanic origin. In other news, the UN rights chief on Thursday intensified criticism of U.S. sanctions targeting Venezuela, condemning the latest measures as extremely broad with the potential to exacerbate suffering among an already vulnerable population. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, has raised concern about previous sanctions imposed by Washington against the government of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. In the new measures, President Trump's administration ordered a freeze on all Venezuelan government assets in the U.S. and barred transactions with its authorities. Bachelet, a former president on Chile, noted that the latest sanctions included exceptions for transactions related to certain food, clothing, and medicine. She said, quote, "However, they are still likely to significantly exacerbate the crisis for millions of ordinary Venezuelans." Venezuela, racked by a devastating economic crisis despite vast oil wealth, has been mired in a political impasse since January when Juan Guaidó, Speaker of the National Assembly, proclaimed himself acting president. He's now recognized as Venezuela's leader by more than 50 countries, including the United States.
This week, on August 5th, the President of the United States took an extraordinary step to block the Maduro regime in Venezuela. President Trump signed an executive order that stops Maduro and his cronies from assessing any of their money or assets in the U.S. This is not an embargo, but it is a direct economic strike designed to penalize Maduro and his illegitimate regime for their brutal attacks on the Venezuelan people. Like all U.S. sanctions, this action permits food, medicine, and basic supplies to get into the country. But with this economic block, our government hopes Maduro and the former regime will change their illicit behavior and step aside. The U.S. has clearly indicated that we will consider lifting sanctions once Maduro and his regime leave power. Meanwhile, he continues to destroy a once prosperous and free nation. The United States stands with interim President Juan Guaido, the democratically elected National Assembly, and the people of Venezuela as they fight to restore constitutional order and democracy to their country.
Meeb Quarin, mother of Nora Quarin, gives a tearful speech to local search teams outside the resort they stay in as a massive search operation scour the jungle for the 6th day now. Nora Quarin, a 15-year-old with learning difficulties, disappeared Sunday, a day after checking into the resort with her London-based family. They believe she was abducted, but police have classified it as a missing person case. A search team of more than 260 people, backed by helicopters, drones, and sniffer dogs, is poking through dense jungle next to the resort in southwestern Malaysia, but have not found any trace of the teenager. Officials have played a recording of the girl's mother, Meeb, calling out Nora, Nora, darling, mommy's here, through loudspeakers in the hope of drawing her out of the jungle if she is still there. Members of a special police commando unit arrived on Friday to help in the search. Senior police official Che Zakaria Othman conceded the search team had not uncovered any concrete clues about the girl's disappearance, but he added the security forces have not to this day given up.
We want to say thank you to each and every one of you. We know you're searching night and day for Nora. We see you working so hard and also praying with us, being with us. We are extremely impressed with the effort, your expertise, your dedication, and we hope you find Nora, and thank you so much. Terima kasih.
Students, many from Jammu and Kashmir, held a sit-in protest in New Delhi after India removed the region's special constitutional status and imposed an indefinite communications blackout. Take a look.
People are suffering. We are not able to talk to our parents. I mean, it's disgusting. ये हमारी स्टेट थी, वो हमारी जगह थी. एटलीस्ट उन्हें हमसे पूछना चाहिए था. सो अगर आपको अमेंडमेंट लगाना है, तो हमारे लोगों को पता ही नहीं है. आधे कश्मीर को पता ही नहीं है कि एक अमेंडमेंट जो है हमारे जो स्पेशल स्टेटस है वो हमसे छीन चुका है.
I would like to send a message to the whole nation that it was a pre-planned murder of democracy, pre-planned murder of constitution.
We never expect from the democratic India like this. We never. Our families are suffering over there, and nobody cares about us.
In other news, U.S. actor Richard Gere boarded an open-arms boat in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea to bring food and water to 121 rescued migrants and to the NGO crew that have been waiting for 8 days for a port to dock at. Take a look.
We're here on the Open Arms boat. I just arrived here from Lampedusa, and we brought as much water and as much food as we possibly can for everybody on the boat. Now, the most important thing for these people here is to be able to get to a free port, be able to get off the boats, get on land, and start a new life, be taken care of, and make a life for themselves. 2 boats that were rescued here, probably all hands on board would have been lost. So the people that you see here on this boat, they're only here because of the donations to Open Arms for the world, also mostly from Europe.
In other news, traffic lights went out in London, air traffic was disrupted in Newcastle, and Britain's National Rail said that train service disruption would continue into Saturday morning due to trains and train crew in the wrong locations. Nearly 1 million people were affected by a major power outage for several hours across areas of England and Wales on Friday, including parts of London, causing rush hour transportation chaos. Problems with 2 generators caused the massive electricity cut, according to the national grid. The power was restored around 6:30 p.m. and the system is now operating normally, it said. But the power outage led to many delays and cancellations of trains on Britain's National Rail network. National Rail said the disruptions would continue on Friday and into Saturday morning due to trains and train crew in the wrong locations. It also affected road travel, with traffic lights not working on London streets. Air traffic was disrupted at the airport in Newcastle. And according to power utilities around the country, nearly 1 million people had to grapple with a blackout, including 300,000 in London and southeast England and 500,000 in Midlands, southwest England and Wales. Some 110,000 were affected in Yorkshire and northeast England. The British energy regulator Ofgem has called for the national grid to provide an urgent and detailed report on the incident. The Iglesia Ni Cristo recently celebrated its 105th anniversary, and in London, they commemorated the event by a debut launch of a play entitled Who Am I? It's a story which enacts the modern struggles of youth and the real problems they face daily, capturing the main character's journey through emotional battles and self-discovery. It was launched at the Lighthouse Theatre, and the INC Center stage has attracted viewers from all over the United Kingdom. More from JD Season.
London is famous for its West End productions and original live theatre, from Les Mis to Phantom and Harry Potter's productions. Today is the debut performance and launch of the Iglesia Ni Cristo's in centre stage at the Lighthouse Theatre in London. Who Am I? A story which enacts the modern struggles in the real world, capturing the character's journey through emotional battles and self-discovery. This debut launch of the Iglesia Ni Cristo's in centre stage has attracted viewers from all over the UK. Audiences who witnessed this much anticipated theatre production had this to say.
What I found interesting was that she'd done her studies, and it was after that. Like, usually when I've seen kind of community productions, it's like very, very young. But she was, she'd done the graduation, she'd come to the UK, and then it was about the challenge once you've done all the studies and you're out in the real world.
Something very significant, like the importance of finding like Christ as well, getting to know yourself too. So I think it was really, really important.
Looking for a job, it really does feel like the Doors thing. Like, you just knock on all the doors and they all answer no. I connected with that a lot, and like, it was just a cool visual representation of something I've been through.
A really nice play. This play is really different. It connects us directly to the God, and we believe that God is still there in this world.
Things like this event, and I'm a guest, so I've just had a look around from outside, but you get a sense of community, and the young people especially going to go home and talk about it or think about it and get insight from those around them. So you kind of, through God, you connect with others. That's kind of the catalyst for a bigger conversation, and so that's why it's good. It's good to see young people at something like this.
I actually came to visit my brother, and he was like, let's go and look at this play. I can't believe so.
And there you have it. Tonight's play has been a truly absorbing experience for the cast and crew whose debut performances won the audience's favor, as you can see from the bustling crowd behind me here. Reporting from the Lighthouse Theatre in London for ABC United Kingdom, I'm JD Season and I'm 1 with 25.
Thank you, JD. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most
For business news, this is Cesar Vallejos. Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Ernesto Pernia on Thursday called for the fast-tracking of infrastructure projects and passage of investment-oriented laws after the economy expanded at a slower pace of 5.5% in the second quarter. In a press briefing, Pernia attributed the weak economic performance in April to June to the continuing effect of the delay in the passage of the 2019 budget, coupled with the ban on public works and other spending leading up to the May elections. For the full year, Pernia, also Director General of the National Economic and Development Authority, sees the country's growth domestic product settling at 6 to 6.5%, well within the government's 6 to 7% target for the year. The growth rate averaged 5.5% in the first semester. I think there's room for really doubling down or redoubling efforts to spend on public infrastructure. As you know, the multiplier effect of government spending, especially on infrastructure, is pretty high. He said for the remainder of the year, Pernia noted that the government must speed up the implementation of infrastructure projects under the Build program, as only 11 of 38 NEDA board-approved project proposals out of the 75 infrastructure flagship projects are in the construction phase.
Rice consumers, so that will be less.
President Donald Trump cast more doubt on chances for a trade deal with Beijing on Friday, signaling he might cancel talks set for September amid an intensifying U.S.-China trade war.
Very well with China. We're talking to China. We're not ready to make a deal. So we'll see what happens. But, we've been hurt by China for 25, 30 years. Nobody's done anything about it. And we have no choice but to do what we're doing. It's working out very well, as you know. We called them on manipulation, and they brought their numbers back. And they brought them back rapidly, and they were able to do that because they manipulate. But that's called monetary manipulation.
Relations have soured further in the past week after Trump announced a new round of punitive tariffs on Chinese goods despite a truce agreed with President Xi Jinping in May, and Beijing responded by halting all purchases of U.S. agricultural goods. The U.S. Treasury then declared China a currency manipulator after the yuan lost value in the face of the new round of tariffs due to take effect September 1. He also said that the U.S. will not do business with Chinese tech titan Huawei, despite earlier pledges to allow American firms to file for waivers from national security restrictions on the company's operations. His comments sent U.S. stocks sharply lower, losing as much as 250 points, undercutting a recent recovery from the continued concerns a trade war will cause a slowdown in the global economy. Shares recovered somewhat but still closed in the red. President Donald Trump said Friday he would like to see the Federal Reserve cut interest rates significantly to boost the economy, but that does not favor devaluing the U.S. dollar.
There's virtually no inflation in our country. If the Federal Reserve would bring down interest rates over a period of time, I would love to see a point or even a little bit more than that. If they would stop quantitative tightening, we have a rocket ship. I mean, we're doing well without it, but we're being handcuffed by the Federal Reserve. If they would stop that, it would be incredible.
But seeming to contradict comments from Thursday, Trump said that while the strong U.S. dollar is making it hard for manufacturers to export, we don't have to weaken the currency value.
The Trump administration devalue the U.S. dollar. No, we don't have to. We have such a strong dollar. The problem is our dollar's at a level that it makes it hard, but the advantage to doing what we have is money is pouring in. Because we have the safest currency in the world, we have the standard of the world, but because it's so strong, it's gotten so strong because other countries have problems, it makes it harder for our manufacturers.
China's economy already is slowing amid the trade conflict with the United States. But if Washington were to ramp up tariffs even further, it could cut Chinese growth sharply, the IMF warned Friday. The International Monetary Fund already had trimmed its growth forecast for China to 6.2% this year, assuming no new tariffs are imposed. But U.S. duties of 25% on Chinese goods not yet facing tariffs would slow the economy in the following year, the IMF said in a report. The annual review of China's economy, known as the Article 4 report, was completed before President Donald Trump announced plans to impose 10% punitive tariffs on $300 billion in imports. That new tranche means that all products from China will be subject to duties starting September 1 in the intensifying trade war. The Washington-based global crisis lender once again called for a quick resolution to the trade conflict between the world's economic superpowers, warning of significant negative spillovers globally. Global stocks fell Friday on worries about the grinding U.S.-China trade war amid rising gloom over the global growth outlook. Leading bourses in Europe lost more than 1%, including in Milan, after Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini pulled support for the government coalition and called for snap elections while Parliament was on summer recess. Wall Street stocks dove after U.S. President Donald Trump said he might cancel trade talks with China scheduled for September and that the U.S. would not do business with Chinese tech company Huawei. U.S. equities later staged a partial rebound due to bargain hunting but finished the day and week lower. Relations between the U.S. and China have soured further in the past week after Trump announced a new round of punitive tariffs on Chinese goods, despite a truce agreed with President Xi Jinping in May, and Beijing responded by halting all purchases of U.S. agricultural goods. The U.S. Treasury then declared China a currency manipulator after the yuan lost value in the face of the new round of tariffs due to take effect September 1.
China. We're talking to China. We're not ready to make a deal, but we'll see what happens. But, you know, we've been hurt by China for 25, 30 years. Nobody's done anything about it. And we have no choice but to do what we're doing. It's working out very well, as you know. We called them on manipulation, and they brought their numbers back. And they brought them back rapidly, and they were able to do that because they manipulate. But that's what's called monetary manipulation.
Britain's economy unexpectedly shrank in the second quarter of the year in Brexit turmoil. Official data showed Friday, placing the country on the verge of recession and sending the pound tumbling to a 2.5-year low. Gross domestic product fell 0.2% in the April to June period, the first time the economy has contracted in almost 7 years, the Office for National Statistics said in a statement, blaming a dramatic slump in the construction and manufacturing sectors. The data, which was worse than market expectations for zero growth and also reflects global economic strains, sent the pound diving to $1.2, the lowest level since early 2017. Another contraction in the current third quarter would put Britain in an official recession, ahead of the nation's expected withdrawal from the EU at the end of October. IH's market economist Chris Williamson said, the latest data reveal an economy in decline and skirting with a recession as headwinds from slower global economic growth are exacerbated by Brexit-related paralysis. The government's official forecaster last month warned that Britain would slide into a year-long recession should it leave the EU without a deal. Bank of England Governor Mark Carney recently warned that a no-deal Brexit could undermine entire sectors of the economy, such as the car industry and farming. And that's it for business news. This is Cesar Vallejos. I'm one with 25. Eagle News International will be back. Stay tuned.
Visiting the Philippines, Manila or Quezon City is a popular destination, but oftentimes the hustle and bustle of the city can be more stressful on your vacation. So when you feel the need to reconnect to nature or relax again, there's a beautiful oasis just outside of the city called the Garden at Ciudad de Victoria. That you can see here include hydrangea, snapdragon, and stargazers. They're truly beautiful. The gardens at Ciudad de Victoria are so peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful that it's become a haven for young couples and a very popular venue for engagement photos. The next time you want an escape from the big city, the garden at Ciudad de Victoria is a wonderful place to visit.
Serena Williams won the rematch on Friday, dominating Naomi Osaka 6-3, 6-4 to ensure the Japanese star won't leave Toronto with the title to go with her #1 world ranking. Take a look. Williams fired 12 aces and didn't face a break point as she beat Osaka for the first time in 3 meetings, avenging her shock loss in last year's controversial U.S. Open final, in which the American star was docked a point in a game after losing her temper when warned about coaching. There was no such drama in Toronto, where Williams broke Osaka for a 5-3 lead in the first and closed out the opening set with a service winner. She broke again for a 2-1 lead in the second and never looked like surrendering the advantage. Even a run-in with the net cord as she raced forward trying to run down a drop shot didn't faze her. Osaka said she played too defensively, something she said was hard to avoid when Williams was hitting 31 winners. And still in tennis, Rafael Nadal needed a set to get adjusted before unloading on Fabio Fognini for a 2-6, 6-1, 6-2 victory and a place in the ATP Montreal Masters semifinals. The quarterfinal comeback keeps the Spaniard's hopes of repeating his title from 2018 alive as he awaits the winner of the clash between Frenchman Gael Monfils and Spain's Roberto Bautista Agut. Nadal earned revenge against Fognini after losing to the Italian in the Monte Carlo semifinals in April. And finally, in our news, the ambassador of the Federal Republic of Nigeria visited the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ Central Office in Quezon City for a courtesy call on INC Executive Minister Brother Eduardo Manalo on Friday, August 9, 2019. Take a look. The visit of Her Excellency Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary Adekanbi Abibat Sonaiki Ayodeji to the INC Executive Minister was also the first visit of a representative of Nigeria to the INC Central Office. There are a number of INC worship services in Nigeria, which is part of the Church's Ecclesiastical District of Northern Africa that comprises over 30 congregations. Nearly the same number of congregations can also be found in the other Ecclesiastical District of the Church in the continent of Africa, the Ecclesiastical District of Southern Africa. The Church has also established a school for ministers extension in Lady Brand, South Africa, which is next to the INC eco-farming community there. The ambassador, Her Excellency Adekanbi Abibat Sonaiki Ayodeji, heard about the wonderful things the Church has been doing throughout the continent of Africa, including the hundreds of thousands who have benefited there from the Iglesia Ni Cristo's programs to fight poverty, These include the eco-farms, which have provided not only food, but an honest and stable livelihood for so many, noted INC Minister Brother Joel San Pedro, Secretary of the Overseas Missions Office. They were able to discuss different ways that the Iglesia Ni Cristo can also help in caring for the citizens of Nigeria. Brother San Pedro said of the meeting between the Nigerian ambassador and the INC executive minister. There are a number of INC worship services in Nigeria, which is part of the Church's Ecclesiastical District of Northern Africa. That comprises over 30 congregations. Nearly the same number of congregations can also be found in the other ecclesiastical district of the Church in the continent of Africa, the Ecclesiastical District of Southern Africa. The Church has also established a school for ministers extension in Lady Brand, South Africa, which is next to the INC eco-farming community there. Among those who greeted Ambassador Sonaiki Ayodeji on her arrival at the central office was one of the INC ministerial students from Nigeria. As she left the INC central office, Ambassador Sonaiki Ayodeji was also warmly welcomed by a crowd of INC ministers and INC central office volunteer workers who waved small flags of Nigeria, and the INC ambassador was assigned as Nigeria's top diplomat to the Philippines on August 18, 2017. She also joined the Nigerian Foreign Service in 1983 and has served in several missions abroad, such as in the Embassy of Nigeria, Lome, Togo, 1991 to 1994, Permanent Mission of Nigeria to the United Nations, New York, United States of America, 2001 to 2006. By virtue of her active role in the United Nations, she served as the chairperson African Group on Commission of the Status of Women from 2005 to 2007, Embassy of Nigeria, Beirut, Lebanon from 2009-2012, and the Nigeria High Commission, Accra, Ghana from 2015 to July 2017. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always one with 25. Good night.
The Peace Bridge of Kowloon.